G'day miners, this is Peter Finn. Welcome to Full Production.
In this podcast, Pete talks everything mining.
A podcast dedicated to the mining industry in the Australian Pacific region.
From production to development, and most importantly, employment opportunities of the industry's biggest project. Now here is your host, Peter Finn.
G'day guys, welcome to episode number 70 of Full Production. We have a bit of a long podcast today with our guest all the way from Canada, Brent Hilscher from DRA Global. Now, I personally really enjoyed the conversation with Brent, as his journey in the industry I found very interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation with Brent as much as I did. Welcome to Full Production, mate.
Thanks.
Your first podcast, you've been on one before?
I've done one before, yeah.
Who'd you do that with?
That was with Crownsman in British Columbia, Canada.
Yeah. I do listen to a couple of theirs, but they do more of a live stream one too, don't they, Brent? They do it like with a camera and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it was video, but it was delayed by a month or so.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, plenty of editing there, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mate, whereabouts in Canada are you at the moment?
I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Yeah, lovely, mate, lovely. And that's where you're from?
Yep.
I have been looking for a few international guests, and as I was just doing the good old LinkedIn stalk and having a search, I'm not too sure how we come across each other. I think I was just looking for an international guest, and I tell you what got me attention on your profile was that you've actually worked for NASA.
Oh, yeah. Asteroid Mining we were looking into there. It was a NASA-sponsored project.
Yeah, I look forward to having a chat about that a bit further into the podcast. But yeah, obviously, you hear about it and read about it in the magazines, and then to find some guy on LinkedIn that's obviously mining related that's got NASA on his LinkedIn profile, I was quietly like, whoa, shit, that's pretty cool.
Honestly, they don't do that much mining research at NASA.
How was it working with NASA? You're only there, what looks like on LinkedIn for 9 months or so. Is that right?
Yeah. It was just a hobby project, basically. Design a system to extract iron and water from asteroids.
Yep.
Water was used as fuel. Iron is used as a construction material.
Yeah, cool.
And of course, there were dreams of titanium and other exotic metals, but mineral processing and smelting in space is extremely hard.
I can imagine, mate. I can imagine.
Yeah. You don't appreciate gravity until you lose it.
Yeah, it's a good theory, mate. But my question is how were their attitude towards it? Like, they're not mining people. You're a mining person. You're obviously, you've been mining your whole career. How was it working with non-mining people that were trying to get into a different type, a very out there type? We can't get any more out there, I don't feel, than that sort of mining. But how was the integration between the two and the communication?
Communication was great. It was very interesting in terms of they were very focused on the science and the technology, and I was more focused on making something economically feasible that we could actually build.
Yeah.
So there was some give and take there. I was trying to, make a tiny little payload so we could put this up for cheap and start mining, whereas they had different focus there.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
Yeah. They wouldn't have brought you along, buddy, if they didn't realise the whole project needed some actual practicality to it. So it looks like NASA's headspace might have been in a bit of a space cloud itself then.
I believe they are still working on it, though.
Yeah, well, I haven't read an article on it in ages, but I remember when I first heard about it, I was like, wow, that's pretty crazily cool.
Yeah.
I want to just get on to you personally before we get in, because I think the main reason that we had a conversation probably nearly a month ago now, Brent, is that correct?
Yep, that's right.
You probably were keen to hang up, but I actually struggled to get off the phone because of how many questions I had and how interesting the conversation was, and about a variety of topics. I don't know how many topics we covered, but it was
there were a few.
Yeah, there was a fair few, and I remember going home that night thinking, gee, I couldn't stop going down the rabbit holes. But before I get into the ore sorting and why we should do it, and obviously look at it, the resources of the value we can add to our resource, I want to talk about your career. So I look at your LinkedIn page, and that's all I've got to go off. But I didn't go that far down, but were you a masonry block layer when you were a young fella?
Oh, well, that's when I was, okay, I won't say how old I was. I was pretty young. And I worked for a few summers in bricklaying.
Yeah, wow. That'll make you stronger, my friend.
Yeah. Oh, we should be fine to talk about it, though. I'm sure the statute of limitations is expired on all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Righto. I used to own a construction company. I was a director of a construction company some time ago, we built a prison, and
neat.
we ran about I say 40 bricklayers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were interesting demographic. I could imagine back in the 90s they might have been a bit more of a different demographic than what they are today.
Oh yeah, and the bricklaying taught me. I don't think I wanted to do bricklaying. I think I should probably do better in school and maybe become an engineer or something like that.
Sometimes that stepping out of the circle, mate, makes you realise how good you had it maybe at school or studying.
Exactly. So I've got to find hard labor jobs for my kids when they turn that age.
I found it a bit ironic when we were building the prison because some of the guys that were the bricklayers that they actually looked like and probably sometimes behaved like they should be in prison. So... But anyway, we got the job done, my friend.
You're going to get letters over that now.
Yeah. I might bleep that part out. But the prison's built now and it's operational. So, mate, what did mum and dad do? Mind me asking, like the personal background. How did you grow up? Did you grow up pretty academically or?
Well, masonry was the family business back a few generations. Old German master masons came across. They built a lot of the pulp mills, a lot of the... and masonry used to be pretty high tech for high temperature applications and things like that. And then they got more into warehousing, and eventually competition was such that it became more difficult to business to be in.
Okay. Yeah. And then obviously from there you decided that the physical labor wasn't for you, my friend, and you've got into a bit of study.
Exactly. And just the lifestyle and living project to project. You're never sure where your next check is coming from when you own a business like that.
How did the family take, mate, when you chose to go to academic study?
They were thrilled. They couldn't be happier. They're like, thank you so much for getting out of this business. we're thinking of getting out of it too. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Oh, look, and I think sometimes it's good to appreciate what people have done in the past for you to, be pushing you into that direction to do academic study. I talked to my grandfather and dad actually even, and when he was growing up, he was, I grew up in the country of New South Wales. He was told that he could read and write. He had to leave school and become a full-time rabbit trapper.
Ah.
And like that was, he wasn't given the option. He actually enjoyed school, but was just told.
Yeah.
I guess, you would have been part of that era, and your parents are too, where they're like, I guess it all depends on their education background too, where it's either, no, you're staying in the family business, or we want you to go and do more and do better things. And by the looks of it, you really took hold of them reins, mate. That led you down to your first path of study. What did you end up doing?
Mining and mineral processing engineering.
Okay, so like a metallurgist.
Yes,
okay.
Very much.
Yeah, okay. I think the last conversation we had, some of the words you used compared to what I used were quite similar, but I just need to make sure we get clarity on what the actual subject you studied was.
I mean, Canada, we use the term metallurgist too. So there's the mineral processing metallurgist, but then there's also real metallurgists who deal with actual metallurgy, alloys and steels and things. I'm the one that deals with chalcopyrite and gold and things like that.
Okay, very good. So whereabouts did you study at in Canada?
Yeah, University of British Columbia.
Cool. Is that your only? Did you end up doing any more study after being a metallurgist?
I almost did an MBA, and then I almost did a master's.
Okay.
And then common sense kicked in and said, whoa, Brent, you've got kids. You can't afford to be going back to school. And I'm like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. My general manager Dean, he's got he's actually a mining engineer and a geologist, and got an MBA, but he done a lot of it part time, just because of that reason too, with kids and stuff. And he's like, you know what, I weighed it up, and for him the desire was too high not to get it, so he decided to do part time, and he said it was worth it at the end. Did you ever think about doing it part time? Or
I did, but now I have 4 kids, so even part time is kind of a joke.
Yeah. I've got 2, so I don't envy you having 4.
Yeah. Well, you've heard the joke. What's it like having 4 kids? and they say, well, imagine you're drowning, and then someone hands you a baby.
Yeah. How did you grow up? Did you grow up in a big family as well, Brent?
Nope, family of 3.
My family, so yeah. I grew up in it's funny, I grew up in a big family of 7 kids.
Oh, wow.
6 girls, and I was the only boy. You'd like to think that I've got some idea how females work, but I don't, Brent. But I think that was a big drive for me. I've only got 2, and I'll stop at 2, my friend.
Yeah.
They're very special, and I think a lot of people in our industry don't appreciate. I see a lot of mates that do a lot of the big rosters and a lot of time away from home, and they miss out on a lot of stuff. And I say it to people quite regularly. I said, why don't you go and get a residential job where you can be home and involved in a community, so you can capture these moments in life, because this is no dress rehearsal, is it?
Yeah, well, exactly. And I had a few of those camp jobs too. Fly in, fly out, a couple locations, and when the kids started coming, it was time to find a job where I could be home every night. Yeah,
it makes you think differently, doesn't it?
It really does.
It actually got me out of a few business ventures. I was just doing business because there were opportunities and they were coming up. And when I had kids, and I started to realise that I was resenting the opportunities that were in front of me because they were pulling me away from my values or what things were important to me.
You realize they weren't opportunities, they were distractions.
That's right. And where your attention goes, energy flows. And I started to realise that as I got out of these ventures, I started to probably change my perception of what's really important in life. And it's funny because growing up in a mining community myself, how can I explain this? That I grew up in a mining community from zero to now. I don't know anything else but mining from a topic point of view. And so many parents went through divorces, so many mates had broken marriages, and so many everyone was money motivated. And I think people these days are no different. I've still got friends that, have young family, young kids, and are now gone through a divorce or are still fly in, fly out. And it's like, you know what? Yeah. You can earn all the money in the world. You can be away in a camp and have a good job. It's a bit like I say to them, no matter what pub you walk into or what mine site you go to, there's a good chance you're going to run into a dickhead. So you're better off, looking at your career and what you want to do and, being around rather than not at all.
Yeah, although I do know some people where camp life is just perfect for their family.
Yeah, same.
They've got a rhythm to it, and it's fine.
You have the same problems in Canada? Because that, it's a big thing, mental health and, family health and community health and socialisation, licenses for mines to ensure that looking after communities.
Yeah, I think there's similar issues. Marriage just in general is hard. It's a lot of work, and it's always important not to get distracted from that.
Yeah, it is, mate. Definitely a two-way street, my friend. Mate, I'll continue on the conversation. So you're obviously a metallurgist.
Yep.
You've had a variety of jobs. I see you've done some, obviously the NASA one sticks out. They must have had some pretty cool gear too, wouldn't they, from a robotic point of view?
It's an interesting place.
Yeah. How'd you line that job up? Did you meet someone? Did it come up in a conversation?
Well, I was curious about what they were doing with asteroid mining, because there's a lot of potential in terms of if you're going to do some deep space missions or even within the solar system, don't send up all the fuel you need into space, because fuel's heavy and you need fuel to get the fuel up there. And it's just an endless, horrible cycle of expensiveness. If you can make some fuel in space, you save a fortune and you can do a lot more. So that was sort of the concept is, hey, anyone out there want some help with figuring out how to efficiently mine water in space, turn it into a hydrogen fuel source, and especially the oxygen fuel source, which is the heavier part. And they said, oh yeah, we'd love some mining perspective on that. And there it goes.
Did you have to move away from Vancouver or to fly in and out? How'd you get to the...
Oh no, it was more like a hobby project.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. I'm actually looking at investing and buying into a tech company myself personally. Some of the innovation that's coming through, and it's all about, I guess, it's all good to have this innovation come through, but it's also how do you integrate it between, human and technology? And I can only imagine the spacecrafts and everything that NASA had would have been pretty advanced.
Yeah, I didn't dabble too much in the space part of things. It's that's all over my head.
Yeah. Mate, and just on your career in general, like not only have you done operations, but I presume you've done a lot of construction as well and a lot of implementation of, design and commissioning.
Some of our designs we've gone and built. ore sorting plants, and we commissioned Mount Poly for Imperial Metals. That was fun.
Yep.
Getting that going. That was a restart. So yeah, it's been an interesting path for sure.
Yeah. Any projects stick out, mate, that made you stronger or entertained you or were fun?
Well, Imperial Metals was fantastic in terms of growth and learning and things like that. Because small companies, anything can happen, right?
Yeah.
You're the metallurgist there. So Plasterdome was good. That was my first job. They got bought out by Goldcorp. But that gave me a good background in safety and the importance of, if you see something wrong, speak up and do something about it. Don't just walk past. Did a few years at Syncrude in operations and then technology development. Technology development was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet it was.
I did a bunch of, whenever I came up with an idea, they'd be like, oh, yeah, you should patent that. And then let's build a pilot and see how it works.
Yeah. Did you ever go down that route, or did you just keep on doing your thing?
Oh, yeah, we've got a few patents from the oil sands.
Yeah, cool. I think I told you that I've got a mate who owns a company in Fort McMurray, heavy diesel, Oztech Industries. He's been on the podcast. He grew up with me, one of my best mates actually. And I haven't been over yet, but I've been meaning to head over. And when I do come over, I'll make sure I reach out because I find it quite interesting how similar but how different, Australia and Canada and different mining environments are.
Mm-hmm. I recommend going over in August.
August.
Yeah. September starts getting a little chilly, and then by the time you get to December, it's very cold up there.
My PA Reagan, I think you might have you been talking to Reagan? She would have lined this podcast up. Yeah. She actually just come back from Canada, so I actually might give you my wife's number so you can give her a call and say that you need me over there in August.
There we go.
I might need some pulling power.
Fort McMurray is the part of Canada that Canadians look at and say, wow, that looks pretty cold. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of photos. Obviously, Jay is there quite regularly with his workshop and run a lot of, I think he calls it Red Seal mechanics.
Oh, yes, the certification program.
Yeah. And he said that he actually lost his house a little while ago. There was a really bad bushfire there. Yeah,
I think about 5-10% of the town burnt.
Yeah.
Beacon Hill was particularly hard hit. Whole neighborhoods were gone.
Yeah, he was gutted, to be frank. He said he picked up the house when it was really because obviously mining's gone for ebbs and flows, and he picked it up really cheap because it was on the downturn, and obviously he got a really nice house for a good price, and he was pretty disappointed to see it go. And he said that the community up there bounced back pretty well though, and obviously we're back on the upswing now as well. I presume Canada's quite the same.
Yeah, things seem to be going well, and Fort McMurray is really a good community too.
Yeah.
So they pulled together quite well.
Yeah. I want to go down the route of, just before I get into ore sorting and some topics that you want to talk about, I want to talk about what you're currently up to. So obviously you're director of Process Western Canada, and that's the ore sorting. But obviously you're still involved as a chairman and an advisor in a couple of different ventures. Do you want to talk about them?
Oh, let's see. I think DRA is pretty much the only thing I'm very active in.
Okay.
Everything else is sort of gone away.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, well, that's good then. So that means you've probably got a bit more time on your hands.
Yeah. You're probably looking at Aurora Analytical, which we, I think that was the oil sands group, which we then sold to Sacre Davy.
Oh, okay.
So they have that.
Yeah. Okay. And do you still do much advisory work for the capital firm?
Not really, no, because DRA has its own capital firm, or branch that we're associated with. So any capital work would be through the company now.
Yeah, very good, mate. So let's talk about DRA.
Sure.
How'd you come about? Because obviously it's really only a new thing that you've got involved with from a LinkedIn point of view. But how long has it been around for, and who's involved with you? I know we talked about quickly last time we had a brief chat about some of the people you got around you too are pretty smart as well and are right into their fields.
Oh yeah, let's see. They've been around for 30 years now. They've been very, very focused on innovations like dense media separation, ore sorting. They built a lot of ore sorting plants and done a lot of ore sorting studies. The big offices are Toronto, Montreal, couple in Australia, which is also where the corporate headquarters is, and then also South Africa.
Cool.
Up to, I think it's 4,000 people now with Senate. They bought an African engineering firm, and they bought Metchem in Montreal. So they've been growing quite steadily the last few years.
Yeah, very good. Whereabouts is the head office? Is it in Perth?
Oh, I'm not sure which city it's in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the map myself. Gee, you do have a few offices.
Yeah. We're all over the place. And the nice thing is we're 100% mining focused, or almost 100%.
Well, that infrastructure side of things, it's a pretty vital to get right. I've only been involved personally in a couple of mill constructions. I'm actually involved in one now, which is a gold copper project, but they've actually found a really good lead zinc deposit. So they're actually doing a bit of an upgrade and changing the mill around a little out at the peak in Aurelia, out in Cobar. So I haven't had a lot to do with mill, and the project seems to be going really well. But I have seen, from an outside point of view, construction companies or infrastructure companies get it wrong from a process point of view. How vital do you find that working for someone like DRA? Is it, obviously being mining focused, is it to get it right? And I presume with your background alone, you've definitely have the skill set to ensure that what you're implementing or infrastructure you're putting in is going to suit the process. Yeah,
it's crucial. You can do 10 good projects, but then if you ever screw one up, that's all anyone will ever talk about.
Yeah, they only talk about your stuff ups, mate. That's for sure.
And so that's one of the reasons I picked DRA, because, we were, whenever they'd be on the bidders list, there was a very good chance they'd be winning that project. And they had a very good technical team. And whenever I would ask people about DRA, they'd say, oh, yeah, no, they have a really good reputation and a really fair price. I'm like, well, that sounds like a good company to join. Maybe I'll just give them a call.
Yeah. And from the journey of joining DRA, and how have you found the quality of their projects? Like, obviously, this is something that we spoke about before we come on the podcast, was when I spoke to you about your skill set and what you're up to, and, I guess having probably a variety of options in front of you from a career point of view. But I think the biggest thing you said to me was, and it's a big thing for me too, and this is probably why I got the conversation started when we first met, was delivery. Because you got to deliver. If you're not delivering, then, like you said, you ultimately get a bad reputation. And I guess DRA, obviously, with their capabilities, give you the confidence that you can go out there and deliver to the standards you want to deliver to.
Well, exactly. And that's why I joined. And it's the whole philosophy of do it right the first time. It's the old thing that, there's never time to do it right, but there's always time to do it over.
Yeah.
And you don't want to fall into that trap. I've been at engineering companies, and I won't say who, but because I've been at a few, so there's anonymity there. But the same design would be done 3 or 4 times, and just it keeps getting rehashed, and hours get burned, and things get delayed, and there's just no need for it if you just took your time the first time, did it right.
Where do you see the biggest breakdown? This is my personal perception, right, and being involved in a few projects, is the guys that are doing the design and planning aren't having the effective communication with the guys that are executing the work.
It can sometimes be that. At the early design phase, a lot of the delays tend to be caused by rushing. So if you're doing a feasibility study and you go to the process guys and say, look, we need you to get a draft so that we can get the estimators and the mechanicals working on this right away. And then you're a young guy, you don't know any better, so you put a draft together and they start working on it. And then you finalize it a month later and you're like, okay, here's the final design. They're like, oh, well, now we have to go back and change everything. It just leads into wasted hours and confusion. Better to take the proper steps in the proper order.
From a bigger picture, what I've seen in the past, this is my own personal experience, is that you get these, I guess, guys from a corporate point of view, do a schedule to a project, and they, plan it out and they tender it, and then they give it to a project manager to go execute. And because, that schedule is competing with maybe 2 or 3 other projects that need the same labour resource or in that area, that sometimes you find that the project manager is under the pressure to do this schedule that he had no control over designing or implementing or
that's true. That happens all the time.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing I've seen in Australia over the years.
Yeah.
It's hard too because you feel a bit sorry for the project manager, but because they're also trying to deliver. I think companies from a higher end point of view need to really consider that their ability to deliver. Do you feel DRA really take the time to consider their capabilities on making sure they get the job done right?
Oh, definitely. And they put a lot of effort into proper scheduling in any bid process, which is very nice in terms of exactly how long will each of these steps take. So that when they put out a schedule, they know that it can be met in a very reasonable way.
Yeah, it's the old saying, mate. You can go for the cheapest, and you can probably pay for it later on, or you can go with someone that you're going to be able to have, transparent conversations with, know your industry, and they're going to be able to ensure that they're putting something in front of you that's practical. Because I'm sure if a design goes wrong, my friend, I'm sure you've seen it, and so have I. It becomes a lot costly when you're running good quality ore for it and you're losing it to the tailings dam. Let's get into ore sorting, because that's originally why we talked.
Yeah,
Didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole of DRA. I was just interested because I know we touched on it from an engineering point of view when we first spoke, and I think that you guys got plenty of work on. Like, obviously, he's internationally based, but I presume he's got a fair few projects underway as we speak at DRA.
Oh yeah, dozens and dozens, big and small. They doing construction projects for little things here and there. I don't have all the details of all the projects with me, but it's amazing how many projects between all the offices are happening all at the same time.
Yeah, I tell you what, offline, I might grab some infrastructure or different division people's details or get an introduction, because I'd love to go. Like, obviously, I'm a contractor or from a business point of view, I obviously do labour hire, mining contracting, labour workforce, and mining engineering and geology consultancy work. So that's sort of my field. I do podcasting as a side because I'm genuinely interested in what companies are and who people are and hearing their stories. So maybe offline we might get introduction to a couple of other people within the business and talk about a few of the projects, because the big thing over here, and the reason why I'd be keen to talk, is we've got to do more in attracting the resources and the people to our projects to get the job done. I don't know what it's like in Canada at the moment, but we're really struggling for people in Australia.
Canada seems to be in that rare, balanced place at the moment where we're growing, but we're not desperate for people yet. The shortage hasn't hit. That's about a year away from now.
Okay.
We'll get there again, because we always do. It's a cycle. But at the moment, things seem to be just about right. Most people are working. It's not that bad, not that good. It's just balanced.
Yeah, nice to have that sustainable yin and yang.
Well, it's not sustainable. It'll be over soon enough.
Yeah, well, it's funny, the last, 6 months ago, I was in Perth, and everybody from, very high up were saying the words of sustainability. And then, 3 months later, everyone's got a big brand new project. So, I don't know. Maybe we get mixed up in our words sometime. But let's get talking about ore sorting.
Sure.
How long's it been around for?
Well, I've talked to guys who said they've done ore sorting back in the 80s.
Okay.
Telling the difference between bright ore and dark ore using photo sensors and computers. Of course, back then, just sorting based on that's not usually a very effective way of sorting. Computer power is terrible. The
Commodore 64, mate?
Was awful. Yeah, PC Junior or whatever.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a great technology. It wasn't at the point where it could compete with, hand picking it or a geologist going through the rocks.
Yeah.
Whereas now, some of these bigger machines are doing 200 tons per hour or more.
Wow. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. So a 10 pack will do 2,000 tons per hour, which might be all you need if you've got a 3,000 ton per hour plant, because the fines will bypass your system.
When you say 10 pack, can you expand on that more, please?
Oh yeah. So if you put in a pack of 10 of these, which is a concept of, one will do 200, but you've got 2,000. Well, that's okay, because this nice little block that you can put into your flow sheet has 10, so it can do 2,000.
Cool.
So we have, usually it's a 6-pack, 12-pack, We use the beer analogy.
Yeah, no, very good.
There's even a theoretical 24-pack, which I don't think anyone has considered putting in, but they could if they had a business case for it.
Yeah, well, I guess it comes down to expanding the resource. What sort of companies do you see using the ore sorting? I guess you got a few moving parts here, don't you? You've got a lot of, I guess you're talking to the geologist and you're talking to the metallurgist to ensure that the ore body is at a status or a type that you can use ore sorting on?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've done work for Teck, Barrick, or I've done work for Teck, Barrick, Gold Corp, New Gold, Agnico, Rio Tinto. So all the big players are looking at it. I've also done work for a whole plethora of the smaller players who have, one or two, say, silver operations in Mexico, and they're looking into putting it in. So it seems like it's just about the right time for the technology. 4 years ago, I presented a conference and people would be like, "Oh, that's a neat idea, ore sorting, but we want to see 100 people build it before we put it in." And now 100 people have put it in, and they're looking at it saying, we better jump on this bandwagon now.
How is the data?
It always depends on the operation, but generally the odds are very, very good of some nice data coming back, especially if you've got underground precious metals or base metals. Usually the underground deposits are very easy to justify sorting. We can sort underground or at surface. There's a lot of options out there.
Yeah, I'm an underground metalliferous kid, mate. I'm excited to hear about it because I can sort of see when you start mentioning the big names and the small players, I can see why, with a big player, they'll be using a 24-pack, in regards to ensuring that they're, obviously pumping out plenty of tons and they're getting the higher return for the shareholders and more resourceful out of their probably already awesome ore body.
Although not necessarily. A lot of these, even the big underground operations, they might only be 200 or 400 tons per hour.
Yeah.
So that's just one or two machines.
Yeah. What about, you got many big block caves over in Canada?
New Afton, they're putting in a couple ore sorting systems that they're working on testing.
I guess I can also see the flip side where if you're a smaller show and you want to be more efficient with your ore body. Because technically what you do with this ability to do ore sorting, you expand the resource from a more efficient point of view.
Yep. And, when you're trying to figure out your business case, there's got to be at least 10 different directions you could take. You could just say, we're going to increase the mill feed grade and run through our resource faster. So we get double the production, but instead of a 10-year mine life, we get all our money in 5 years. That's a very good way of doing it. Usually, they'll also look at their cutoff grade. So they'll say, okay, well, we're going to double our mill feed grade, but now, say it's gold, we're producing at 500 an ounce instead of 800 an ounce. Well, let's lower our cutoff grade. All of a sudden, your cutoff grade is half of what it was before. Your resource might double or triple. So you could easily end up in a situation, depending on your geology, where you're producing more gold, but your mine life also goes up or stays the same.
Yeah.
Everything is dependent on the specific geology of the site.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the amount of avenues you could go down. Like when I think about, how far, as from an ore sorting expert that you guys are in yourself personally, how far do you go? Do you obviously start with the geologist and see what sort of data they've got to give you to work with, and the ability of what the ore body currently is. I guess I presume a lot of these mines already have. They're already operating, so you're already getting that ability to tap into some data or be able to capture it.
A lot of times it'll be CEOs who come up to me and say, "Hey, Brent, we saw what you did at this operation. Could you see if you can do that for ours?" Sometimes, even now, I'm getting investors calling, and they're chatting about ore sorting, and they're like, "So, I'm invested in such and such mine. Do you think it would work there?" And I'm like, "Well, that's a tricky issue. I'm not working for that mine, so I can't really comment." But it's amazing the number of the diversity of people who are interested in ore sorting, and they're all interested in something different. So CEOs like to see profit maximized. The mining engineers, usually they deal with the middle metallurgist complaining that the mill feed grade wasn't as high as it was in the block model. there's the poorer quality being sent to the mill. Whereas when you put an ore sorting in between the mine and the mill, it takes care of that, and it regulates the quality of ore being sent to the mill. So they like that. The geologists really like the lower cutoff grade so that they can increase their reserves, especially when they get a bonus linked to the increase in reserves. And the metallurgists, they tend to a couple neat things happen in metallurgy when you do ore sorting, especially if you have a sulfide deposit. So if you're concentrating your sulfides in your mill feed, your tailings are going to be, or your waste rock rejection is going to be lower in sulfides. So you can make non-acid generating waste piles. But also your mill feed is now a little softer, and your recovery is going to be a little higher because you're concentrating your sulfides, which are easy to grind.
I presume you go into being a metallurgist yourself. I presume, obviously, the mill holds that ability to bring out the actual end product. I presume you do a lot of work with the metallurgist to ensure that whatever standard of plant they're running at, or whatever, I guess, flocculants or additives they're putting into their system to ensure that they're getting that right mix. You wouldn't want to, have good quality ore coming through and the mill not be able to handle it.
Yeah, exactly. And in some cases, we need to do a redesign. So if we're only increasing the mill feed grade by 30%, that's usually easy. That's not a huge radical change. But in situations where we're saying, we're going to double the mill feed grade, so 100% increase. Now, if you've got a flotation-based process, the roughers will be fine, but your cleaning circuit is going to be overloaded because you're doubling the amount of rougher flotation product that's going to be going there. So you might need an extra regrind mill. You might need an extra flotation column or two.
You make me want to go down the tailings avenue because, if you get a decent size, I've got a mate actually, Century Resources up in Queensland, Barry Harris, been on the podcast. Have you had a chance to listen to any of the episodes of the podcast yet, Brent? I'm not too sure.
A few of them, but not his.
Yeah, Barry Harris, they're actually reworking tailings. They jork the tailings dam up and rework it. And he's pretty big on being able to. Barry personally, when you get to know him personally, he's big on trying to change the perception of mining, and there's a lot of tailings out there we can rework because of the ore sorting and maybe even the grade control that brings. Does that give the ability to have some steady readings and understanding of what is actually going into the tailings?
Yeah, because you'll have a better understanding of what's going into the mill. What I really like about it is if you're concentrating the sulfides in the mill feed, then they'll tend to be concentrating in your tailings impoundment, which will be smaller.
Yeah.
So if you throw away half of your mill feed, it goes into a big waste rock pile somewhere, and your tailings impoundment, where you want your sulfides to go, is smaller and more concentrated.
Let's talk about bulk ore sorting. And
oh, sure, yeah.
Can you expand a bit more on that for me?
Right. So we've been talking about particle sorting, where each rock is individually scanned by, an X-ray or a color sensor or an electromagnetic sensor, and then individually diverted into the proper bin. So that's 200 tons per hour, which is pretty impressive to make a decision, on each rock as it flies past. So bulk sorting is a whole other thing altogether, where, you might have a, 300,000 ton per day pit or whatever, right? And you're saying, well, look, it's not so valuable that we want to do particle sorting. The ore, the average grade is much lower. The potential to upgrade it might be less significant. But you do see some natural variation within the 100-ton packet size. So this truck might be significantly higher grade than that truck. And if you were able to sort on a scoop by scoop or truck by truck basis, you might be able to reject some material that you were losing money processing. So that's the concept of bulk sorting. And there's a few different angles. There's the shovel-based technology, where each scoop is scanned with XRF technology to say, this is about how much copper, lead, zinc, iron, and such is in this bucket. And based on that, it'll try to guess whether that's ore or waste. And then there's another technology which, after your first crusher, you put it on a conveyor, and the sensor will scan that conveyor, and it'll tell you, this is how much sulfur, lead, zinc, everything. Light elements and heavy elements.
That's amazing, hey, dude. Like that's
it is fantastic.
That's in depth, like to be picking it up on the conveyor belt and even on on a stockpile. But because the amount of look, and this is my mill experience. I obviously had to start in the mill growing up as a kid because I wasn't old enough to go underground. But I remember talking to the geos and the metallurgists who actually I'm friends with the geo Don Smith, been on the podcast before. About the blends, trying to get the blends right. And I remember once I was only young, I got the blends wrong. And trust me, I knew about it. I didn't get to go on the loader for a little while after that.
Oh yeah, these sensors would be amazing if you're trying to maintain a blend, and you could have a couple conveyors from a couple sources. The computer could be programmed to automatically regulate the blend based on the readings. Yeah.
And you've got some pretty hard, solid evidence around the quality of the data you're collecting here?
Oh yeah. So a conveyor sensor would be something called prompt neutron gamma activation, which is very, very consistent results. Neutrons are emitted from a source. As it flies through the belt, some of those neutrons will collide with some of the atoms that make up the rock. Those atoms will emit a gamma ray, and the gamma ray will have a very specific signature to the atom that emitted it. And it's sort of like an AA machine.
Take much collaboration when you first install it?
I don't think so. It seems like you calibrate it once and you're kind of set for a while. I think they might be yearly or bi-yearly calibrations. There's no parts that actually touch the ore, which is nice, so there's no wear components. Although you would have to make allowances for your nuclear source decaying over the years.
Yeah, okay, yeah. All this stuff is for me personally, it's rather interesting. Everybody at the moment, this is my own personal perception, I'd like to think that I've got a pretty close pulse off the industry, especially in Australia in general. I'm hearing ore sorting, but I don't actually hear it as much as I hear other topics. And to obviously talk to someone like you, it obviously expands my mind into I tell you truthfully, a lot of rabbit holes and a lot of operations that could benefit from this. Let's talk about the cost factor for implementing a product like ore sorting, whether it be, shovel-based sort of stuff or conveyors or, however you go about doing the whole feasibility of it. What are people roughly looking at outlaying from a capital point of view to get this right even from a feasibility point of view? Because that's where they're all going to start initially, aren't they?
Yeah. So, if you're looking at a 200 ton per hour operation, after you do your testing, engineering, construction, you could have that commissioned for $4 or $5 million, all in, probably $5 million. A bulk diverter sensor, that's going to be a lot cheaper. Installed cost with engineering and testing is going to be under $1 million. But the diversion system itself is going to be expensive, especially if it's brownfield.
Yeah.
So, if you want to plow the belt off, that's cheap, but not ideal for a number of reasons. But if you're going to break the conveyor and redirect to a proper diversion system, that's going to cost you. That's not a small undertaking.
Yeah.
We've got some quotes, $4 million for the diversion system. Canadian, 4, 5, 6 million. It depends on the situation, the length of the conveyor, and things like that.
It's interesting because obviously, and you're speaking open and transparent here, not only about the ore sorting idea or the concept in general and how it's implemented, but being under the DRA brand, you're able to also bring that resource to the table to ensure that you're able to execute it to how it needs to happen.
Oh yeah, exactly, and we can. That's one of the nice things is we can do fixed bid construction now. It's an option for us, so we can say, oh yeah, whatever the project happens to be, a $50 million plant, we can say, yeah, $50 million guaranteed, where it comes out of our pockets, And that's one of the options we have now.
Oh, and look, and to be honest, the mines that are getting this implementation put in, they've already done their own feasibility study. They understand what their JORC reports are, or what their ore body is underground, or however it's situated, to understand the benefit they're going to get from it.
Yeah. There was for bulk diversion. I was talking with some of the conveyor manufacturers, and there is a very, very interesting concept where, if you're breaking your conveyor and installing a diversion system in the middle of it, that's extremely expensive, but also involves some downtime. So we were coming up with an idea where end of conveyor, so as it's falling onto the stockpile, having a diversion system which would come under that and with a secondary system, sort of a conveyor running parallel to the dump, catch the material and then send the waste back away from the ore stockpile. The sensor is on the conveyor leading to the stockpile. Once that conveyor gives the warning that waste is on its way up, then things are readied. Once the waste gets to the top of the conveyor and it's about to fall into your stockpile, a diversion system kicks in and it is sent away from that pile. And then it could be trucked to waste piles and disposed of.
Yeah, mate, that sounds like a game changer to me, my friend. I look forward to hearing more about this topic and diving down. I guess some more characters within DRA and obviously the industry in general. You get to are you a bit of international travel, Brent? I presume you've been to Australia and Africa and a few other places.
Yeah. I was. They brought me out to speak at I think it was the World Gold Conference in Ballarat.
Oh yeah, Ballarat, nice place.
Yeah, and it was neat. Got to see all the history of Australia and Ballarat, and that was very cool. The gold rush and things.
Good. It's a good part of the. It's actually really starting to pick back up there from an exploration point of view. There's actually I think Kirkland Gold own an awesome operation down there. I haven't done much research into it for a little while because I had shares in them and I sold them. So I've decided not to no longer look because some of the results they're getting per truckload is unbelievable. So anyway, reality sucks sometimes.
And I've been asked to I don't know if it's the World Gold Conference again, but to give a bit of a short gold course on ore sorting and how it applies. I think it's this summer or your winter. Anyway, in the next year.
Make sure you sing out, buddy, when you're coming over this way, and I'll communicate it to my networks as well, and hopefully get you.
I'll come over and say hi.
Yeah, come and say good day. How do you find Australia and Canada? We must be. Well, I feel we're very similar in our standards and how we conduct ourselves in the mining environments.
It's extremely similar, and I was hired by the Government of Canada to investigate similarities and differences between Canada and Australia in innovation in mining.
Yeah. Okay.
So Australia is known as a hotbed of mining innovation, and the government was like, "Okay, Brent, how do they do that, and how could we learn from that?" Yeah, I've learned all sorts of things about the differences and similarities, and I think the similarities definitely outnumber the differences. Similar populations, similar thoughts about safety and sustainability and in the environment, and how mining companies should behave and the standards that they should be held to.
I agree. Every time I run into a Canadian person, even yourself, where we've had a couple of language barrier difficulties around certain words, but nothing major. But also you're right. I'm talking to my mate Jay in Fort McMurray, and he's like it's pretty well exactly the same, and the Canadians are quite similar to an Australians. And you're right. What I like about Australia and Canada is unfortunately a mining company, and we used an example over in Brazil a little while ago where 230 people passed away from a tails dam lift. That doesn't just reflect badly on that company, it reflects badly on all of us, especially I actually live in New Zealand these days, and I travel pretty heavily, but New Zealand's it's got a couple of mines here and a really clean cut, nice and tidy mines from Oceana Gold, and it's a pretty much a non-mining country. And you know, the amount of times I go to a barbecue, and you got to mention that you're, you know, in the mining industry, and the conversations you got to have about defending the industry from a perception point of view.
Yes, you have to explain it to every person you meet from scratch every time.
Every time.
Yes. How planet Earth will not support this many people without mining. We need it for farming. We need it for everything we do.
I think I might just do a podcast just on that, my friend. Or I sometimes tell them not to turn the light on and put their phone down, and probably take their clothes off, because that was probably made by a factory that had copper in it.
Of course, yes. Everything you eat and do and see is mining. And there's just no way around that.
Yeah, I think personally, this is the whole idea of the podcast, and obviously, I'm pretty passionate about the mining industry from a human perception point of view, a global perception point of view, like just the perception of mining in general, because it's given me so much and it gives so much, but yet we don't seem to. It's a bit like what you said before in the conversation. We only remember the bad things we did, not the good things. You know, they'll remember the one bad project you've done, not the 10 good ones. So it's absolutely critical that we all start working as a team and a unit to ensure the perception of mining is attractive, because Deloitte's done a really good report on millennials and zennials that are coming through and what they're looking for. And, you know, in joining, you know, the mining operations or joining the workforce in general. You know, right now in Australia, we're really struggling to find people to become interested in mining engineering, metallurgy, geology. And I don't know what it's like in Canada, but yeah, we're really struggling for people to want to join the industry, because it's, you know, probably been given a bad perception over the years.
Yeah, well, I know quite a few Canadian graduates who, after university, end up going to Australia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, actually, now you think of it, I did run into a young geologist in Kalgoorlie a little while ago, so you are correct. Yeah.
Yep.
Do you talk much about it over there in Canada, about your intake in the schooling system for mining topics?
Not really. I mean, it was only 2 years ago, maybe. UBC class graduated 70 mining engineers or 60 mining engineers. And, you know, my class was 10. The class before me was 4. And now we're into not just dozens, but
good numbers,
60 or 70. That is amazing.
Yeah. How do you find their attitude, the new generation coming through with some of the stuff that you're talking? Like, they must be bringing you know, some smart guys around DRA and around yourself personally. They must be bringing a bit of a different thought process to the table as well.
Well, I'm always amazed how much smarter they are than I am.
Don't tell them that, mate.
Yeah, that's the first thing you notice right off the bat is you'll explain what you want to do, and they're like, "All right, here's a spreadsheet that does everything you wanted." I'm like, "Well,
yeah,
my work here is done. All right, good job." You know, their fresh perspective on everything. You know, they haven't been in the industry for 20 years, so they haven't learned all the bad habits, and they haven't learned what's possible and what's not. So they'll come up with an idea, and your first reaction might be to think, well, that's not going to work. And then you're like, well, why wouldn't that work? Maybe that will work. So the fresh ideas is wonderful.
Yeah, you're right. I see some guys heads bend, like some, you know, older statesmen of the industry, I like to call them. You see they're you know, that naturally over time you become a little bit fixed mindset in how we do things. And, you know, I used to people get nervous about the new people coming through. I actually get excited for that, what you just said then. But you do see the elder statesmen can't bend their head around what the new person brings to the table at times.
Yeah. And I've seen that a few times where they'll say, oh, well, we tried ore sorting in the 80s and it didn't work, so we don't want to try it again.
Yeah.
And the only real way to change their mind is to show them the business case. So you say, okay, well, it might not work, but if it does, you're going to make an extra $200 million a year at this particular operation.
It makes your $4 or $5 million outlay look very minimal.
Yeah. Or you say, you know, hey, look, how much of this waste do you want to put back into the mill so that we don't rock the boat? Because sometimes you say, oh, we're going to throw away half your mill feed and we're going to replace it with lower grade ore, which we then upgrade further, or waste piles, which we then upgrade further. There's a lot of different sources. So that you make more metal. And sometimes they'll be like, oh, well, that's too much. Can we just throw away 10%? we'll say, well, sure, we can send some of that waste back into the mill, but it's going to cost you 20 million a year in lost opportunity. And they're like, oh, well, of course, don't do that then.
Yeah, well, it's a catch-22, mate. I'm sure you've had plenty of them interesting conversations, and by the sounds of it, you're going to have plenty more in the future.
Yeah, so we've learned to always do the business case because the money talks for us.
Yeah. Oh, look, and end of the day as well, everyone's got someone different to answer to. Like, the workers, they obviously want certainty around their work fronts. And, unfortunately, in the mining industry, we've given them certainty and then given them a lot of uncertainty really quickly. And then we've gone, the service providers like myself, from a contracting point of view, we're obviously trying to attract the workers to come work for us. And then we're obviously trying to maintain good quality relationships with the operations manager or the operations itself. And then the operations are trying to be, either trying to attract workers to them or use contractors that are going to do the right thing by the workers, because end of the day, these guys are the guys that are doing the work physically and mentally, and obviously spending their time. But also the general mining operations, they want to ensure that they're being efficient. I guess hence the podcast name. They want to be full production. They want to be, ensure they're getting the high grade or the grade that they want. And obviously they've got to answer to the shareholders. So, and technically sometimes the shareholders are the workers themselves. So, we're at a mass scale, but, end of the day, it's all connected together to be able to ensure that, we are looking after each other as a whole, as an industry, but as well as, embracing the new technology coming on board, and embracing something different, getting rid of that. This didn't work last time. No, I can't see it working again this time. Let's keep on playing.
And efficiency is sort of what ore sorting it really excels at. Where, if you've got blocks of good ore and blocks of basically barren granite, before there was nothing you could do to sort those unless you had hand pickers who could pick out the rocks of granite. So those would get ground up, turned into sand. That's very energy efficient or energy intensive procedure. Then you mix it with water and chemicals and separate it. And there's energy used along the way. There's water used. There's chemicals used. And the carbon footprint is significant. Necessary, but significant. So if you can say, hey, let's take that block of granite and throw it away because there's nothing in there that's worth keeping, you save energy, carbon, water, chemicals. Every step of the way is made more efficient. The company will make more money and therefore pay more taxes to its local government. It's more likely to keep running for a number of years because it's more profitable. So there's more employment for people. It's the list of benefits besides just raw economics is pretty impressive.
I'm impressed. I'm really happy that you've made the time to come on the podcast, my friend. And I personally look forward to staying in contact and watching also and probably talking to some more people within DRA, but also watching the journey of it evolve, because I feel that this efficiency that it brings to the table, it's not just, the benefit of one or two people. It's the benefit of, like you just said before, everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Mate, I want to wrap it up because you're probably going to send me an invoice and it's going to be pretty high because I've had you for over an hour now. I don't want to get one of your invoices. So I want to just wrap it up with a couple of questions that I usually ask everybody is, what makes you nervous about the mining industry as a whole moving forward?
Nervous? I don't think anything really makes me nervous. I've pretty much gotten used to the cyclical nature. I mean, that's what should make most people nervous is every, 5 or 7 years, bad things happen in mining. But you just plan for that. Technologies like ore sorting, it was 2015, 14, 15, something like that, where I really got started into that, and that started taking off. And we were able to grow a substantial department during one of the worst recessions in mining. Just because ore sorting is the sort of thing that you would do when things are good, but you'd also do it when things are bad. There was an operation where they were looking to shut down. We applied ore sorting and they managed to stay open. So it's a good last resort for people.
Oh, humans are funny, aren't they, when they're in that crocodile brain where they're not too sure what to do?
Yeah.
Because I remember when I first started this podcast, I had the market was really down. It was down in the dumps, and I was probably keen to, still enjoy the mining game and have some good conversations. And a lot of people wanted that influence. So a lot of people come and reached out and wanted to get on the podcast. But all of a sudden, like you said, quickly they turned around and become fat and chubby from a workload and a financial point of view that they no longer needed me. So they no longer needed the influence or the conversation. But, they are slowly starting to come around as they find their feet, because they, obviously been doing it tough for a while. But it is that yin and yang. We've got to, probably put more education around looking after ourselves long term.
Yeah.
Because it also makes me interested, like, you're right, as they go through these downturns of, industries, this is a time where we need to work harder and be more efficient. This is where I'm actually keen to talk to you about conveyor companies. Like, these are the guys that should be stepping up to the plate, and saying, hey, let's not just be a conveyor company. Let's go and see DRA and have a conversation, which is already having. That, technically when the downtime comes, it's probably an even better opportunity to outlay the capital and invest in something like this to make you more sustainable long term.
Yeah. And I've been talking with some of the conveyor companies, especially around the concept of bulk sorting.
Yeah.
Where it would be nice if we could just offer clients a complete black box package of conveyors and sensors and diversion systems and algorithms and all the computer backup that they need. So it's just, oh, you want this? You want a bulk sorter? Boom, here you go. Rather than building every single project from scratch.
You're not too far away, mate, from becoming the complete package. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Mate, I want to wrap it up. A couple more questions is, what makes you excited about the mining industry as a whole?
Well, the number of opportunities is huge. The number of mills that have so much potential just sitting there untapped, be it chemistry or grinding optimization or installing an ore sorter, there's almost always millions of dollars sitting on the table. And you just walk in and do a circuit survey and you come out and say, well, you can make $1 million here, you can make $500,000 there. And the opportunities are just fantastic. And they're just waiting there for a metallurgist to come along and seize them.
Exciting times, mate. That's definitely. I look forward to. I'm looking forward to seeing it evolve, because I think some people out there, even the young metallurgists or different stages of career, when they finally get the grasp of how something new works, I feel that their head will explode with excitement.
Yeah.
Mate, just to wrap it up, I really want to say thanks for coming on to the podcast, and I really appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to catching up and interacting in the future moving forward. The question I want to ask you before you go is, how is the best way possible for people to reach out and get in contact with DRA or yourself personally for a chat?
Oh, they can call me. You want my number?
Mate, if you want to put your number on mate, you're not going to have too many old girlfriends chase you.
Yeah, 604-352-9585. And I've got an email. I'm on LinkedIn. It's easy to find me up there.
Yeah, I'll make sure I'll put your phone number, email address, and your LinkedIn profile, if you'd like, Brent, on the show notes of the podcast.
Yeah. Perfect.
Brent, thanks for your time, mate, and coming on Full Production. Much appreciate your insight, and looking forward to the future, my friend.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
I hope you guys enjoyed that podcast with me and Brent. I don't think that will be the last we hear from Brent, as he has plenty of value to add, and along with DRA Global. Next up on Full Production, 71 and 72 is another long one where we've made into a double header, so 2 podcasts with Kim Eels from Max Mine.